Welcome to How Women Inspire. Today, you are in for a treat. We have Kwajelyn Jackson, who is joining us. This is an unbelievable national treasure that you're about to hear from. She is a respected voice on reproductive justice, movement building. She's the executive director of the Feminist Women's Health Center. Oh, doesn't that just sound beautiful when you hear it? My nervous system relaxes. This is an independent nonprofit that is Black-led, feminist, multi-generational, multiracial, reproductive health, rights, and justice organization, providing compassionate abortion care in the South. This is music to my ears. I hope all of you are so happy to hear. She's in Atlanta, Georgia. And she also, beyond that, if that wasn't enough, Kwajelyn also sits on the board of directors for Abortion Care Network, the Black Mamas Matter Alliance, and the Lola. Kwajelyn has been named as one of the 500 most powerful leaders in Atlanta by Atlanta Magazine for 5 consecutive years. She is interested in opportunities to use a reproductive justice lens to spark dialogue, transform perspectives, develop leaders, and cultivate change, the change we all want to see. Welcome to our podcast today. I am so happy that you are here with me.
Thank you so much, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so let's get started with some fun stuff. You're very serious as a leader, but you got to have some fun. So, do you have a favorite walk-on song or a song for the good days or the tough days?
My favorite sort of theme song would be Electric Lady by Janelle Monáe. I think it gives me the right energy. They are non-binary icon. And yeah, Electric Lady.
Beautiful. You have a moment when you were like, I'm whipping out my song. When was the last time you had an Electric Lady playing? Good day, tough day?
Mostly good day. But I think I have a handful of things that will instantly change my mood. And music is certainly one of them.
All right. Okay, good. I am 100% believer in that. I have a couple musicians in my family, and every time I get grouchy and I go to see the arts, it just transforms my feelings. So we are sisters in that. So how did you get started in this kind of work? Was there like an experience or a story that drove you to do reproductive justice work?
It was absolutely not a straight line to this work. I went to college at Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, which is a historically Black college, a single gender institution where feminism is sort of baked into the soil. But my major was economics. And after school, I went into banking. And then I went to an arts nonprofit. But I was always connected to social justice. And I really sort of continued to return to that Black feminist grounding that I was able to absorb at Spelman. And the other sort of parallel line to that, my mother worked at Planned Parenthood in St. Louis, where I grew up, not when I was a kid, but when I was in college and in my early 20s. And so she was also a pathway to connect me to reproductive health. But yeah, a friend passed me a job description that said they're looking for a volunteer coordinator at Feminist Women's Health Center. And I think you'd be great at that. And I applied, and that trajectory brought me to becoming the first Black executive director of the organization.
I love that. You, in many ways, are just a Renaissance woman, right? But I love that it also means you can bridge so many different things, right? And I think as executive directors or leaders of nonprofits, myself included, that's been one of the biggest benefits I get to bring with me is like I can move between different communities and build a lot of bridges. So I am sure there's a lot of wins as a result of that. That said, when you think about yourself as a Black leader, or just generally sort of the work that you're doing, like what kind of policy changes do we need to have in this country to make it better for BIPOC people and leaders?
To be honest with you, there are so many things that need to be addressed. But I think where I would begin is really thinking about how this country is willing to reckon with the history of white supremacy and racial discrimination that have perpetuated and have really seeped into so many parts of the ways that our society functions.
Yeah.
We often talk about how things disproportionately impact communities of color, but we don't interrogate why and why they are allowed to persist. So being able to acknowledge and name and like actually uncover where those racial biases exist in policy and how we can root them out and actually center the people who are the most harmed, that's the pathway to benefiting everyone. And I know in this moment when there are many forces that are trying to brush aside and erase our ability to access that history through some of the book banning strategies that have happened, through the ways that folks are trying to undermine affirmative action, like those strategies only further us from getting the kind of transformation that we need to have equity in this country.
Right. Well, the Supreme Court decision that happened a year ago, to suggest somehow we're in a post-racial society, or it's no, I mean, this is not history. This is every day today. It's happening right as we speak. And I guess what I hear you saying sounds aspirational. How does it work in practice, though? Are you literally going to bodies of policy, like legislators, and saying, let's shift the way you're making policy? Tell us a little bit more.
Happy to. So, in addition to the clinical services that we offer at Feminist Center, we also do public policy work, civic engagement, movement building, and leadership development. And so, a big portion of our work is helping our base of folks learn about these systems of oppression, learn about our history and our present, and then take their lived experiences with us to the Capitol. We always try to prepare for not only the restrictive, harmful laws that we want to stop from moving forward, but also to demand the things that our communities need through proactive legislation. So we work directly with policymakers, mostly at the state level. So state level legislators to help to craft policies that, again, center the most marginalized folks. So those are Black communities, non-English speaking communities, people who are living in perpetual poverty, people who are disabled, people who have varying documentation status. We make sure that those people are not only considered, but are at the table when we're crafting legislation. And they are with us every step of the way to speak in their own voice.
Thank you for sharing that. And for me, when I think about it, in our organization, I always say we center women of color, because as a white woman, I'm always going to get my needs met. We have to have the core of everything that we're designing this for the people who are being left out and the most marginalized. If not, nobody wins. And we're always going to be trying to remediate inequity and the results of it. So you're such a beautiful, powerful, and warm voice at the same time. I can imagine everybody just wants to fall in line with whatever you say. No, really, seriously, like, and everybody listening to this, I know, is like, sign me up. Because clearly you are the kind, like, what was one of the things that you're involved in is like
Oh,
the mamas matter and stuff. Like, just that sort of, you come across as that, I'm going to take care of everybody, a little bit of that mama feeling, which is pretty beautiful.
the Black Mamas Matter Alliance is a really near and dear organization to my heart. I've been a part of it since its founding, and we really are focused on the ability of people to be able to not only have safe pregnancy and birth, but to be able to raise their families in safety and in dignity. I'm not a parent, but I certainly care very much about people having the full range of their reproductive choices honored and protected.
There's all kinds of ways to be a mama, and I'm going to tell you, I feel the mama energy from you, whether you're parenting or not. So you named a lot of people, different types of populations of people who are not the mainstream, or the society is not designed for them necessarily. How do you think about intersectionality and playing a role in understanding reproductive justice? And when you think about equity and reproductive justice, why is that so critical?
Well, as Audre Lorde shared with us, we do not live single issue lives. So often we have to consider all the different parts of us and how they affect how we move around in the world. So the identities that we hold, the experiences that we've had or not had, the access, the discrimination, the harm, the stress, the trauma, All of these things are playing a role in how us as individuals move through society. But very rarely are those things considered more broadly in all their uniqueness. And so intersectionality allows for us to look at the compounding of multiple systems of oppression at the same time. And not to say that if you care about abortion, then that's the only thing that you need to care about. You also should care about economic justice because people need to have the means to be able to access healthcare. They need to be able to go home to a safe and warm place to manage their recovery from having an abortion. They need to be in a safe relationship where they can be comforted by community. They need to be able to have the income to support the children that they're probably already raising. All of those things matter when we're thinking about policy. So I think it's really important for folks who may not be thinking about identities that they don't hold in their advocacy to start to broaden that view so that they can think about folks who don't have the same level of access and privilege that they have, and making sure that nobody gets left behind. That's what reproductive justice does for us.
Thank you so much for sharing that frame. And I think so often we think of it as like, do you have access to healthcare or not? And there's so much more to it. So as a woman with experience in reproductive health and justice, how can individuals and organizations, people listening, effectively advocate for these policies and support all types of bodily autonomy and equitable access to reproductive healthcare services?
So as folks might know, we just had a sad anniversary, the 2 years since the Dobbs decision that effectively eroded abortion access throughout much of the country. 14 states have no abortion access whatsoever, and 7 others have severely restricted access, like Georgia. And so, to our earlier point, I think having conversations in your community with people that you care about, with people that you love and trust, talking openly and honestly about not just abortion, but lots of different aspects of reproductive health and sexual health, telling our pregnancy stories, telling our menopause stories, all of those things help to reduce some of the stigma that still exists around reproductive health care. Secondly, I know that because this is a very big election year and there are a lot of things that are competing for our attention, one of the things I try to emphasize when I'm doing organizing in the community is focusing on what's happening where you live. It doesn't mean that we ignore what's happening at the federal level or ignore what's happening globally, but it's critical to understand who are the people who are making decisions about your life that you have access to. Because your state representative might go to your church. Your county commissioner might send their kid to the same Little League team that you send yours to. Your city council member might shop at the same grocery store that you do. You have tremendous access to people who are in positions of power where you live. And so being engaged, not just as we move toward the election, but beyond, to help to advocate for the things that you need and the things that other folks in the community need are really important. And then the last thing is that community organizations that are providing comprehensive reproductive health care, gender affirming care, contraceptive access, a full range of services that are so necessary and needed in their communities are often hanging on by a thread. So being able to help support nonprofit clinics, advocacy organizations, again, that are doing work that affects you, your community, your neighborhood, your state, is critically important as we are fighting against these sometimes overwhelming attacks. So I would encourage folks to get involved if they want to learn more about independent abortion providers. The Abortion Care Network is a place that helps to bring together independent providers all around the country. And the National Network of Abortion Funds does the same for abortion funds that help to provide resources and practical support to people who have to travel for abortion care because it's not available where they are.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So just to recap, as somebody who's not living the reproductive justice healthcare like solution system, I can give money to those organizations and I can find them in say that again, the Alliance?
They're the two that I just named, the Abortion Care Network and the National Network of Abortion Funds are two great places to see maps of like what's happening across the country and zoom in to where you live.
So if I'm going to, you mentioned like you go to the grocery store and there are all these, powerful people. Okay. Let's assume I know some of them, or I go to the grocery store and I see them. What would you say? How do I in my California life, how do I use my privilege? Because in California, it's a little bit of a different story, right? Clearly there's not enough and it's still not easy and hard for people. But what would is there a place where I can find out like, what are the policy positions that I should try and advocate for? How would you think people should go about that?
There are many. One of the things that I often recommend to people is if you really want to get activated and get the information and tools to do work to support these causes, finding a political home is really important. And that doesn't mean a party, that doesn't mean a candidate. It means an organization that can help to provide you with talking points, can help to sharpen the tip of your spear so you know exactly where you can be the most effective and precise. So in California, for example, there are multiple reproductive justice organizations that are organizing people around state work that's happening at the legislature, and then also specific work that's regional. So in the Bay Area, in Southern California, in Northern California, on the border, like all of those places, there are opportunities for folks to dig in more deeply. So while it probably would be not a good use of our time for me to rattle off a long list, I really encourage people to say reproductive justice organizations, my zip code, as a start to say,
Right.
who are the folks in my own backyard that can help to point me in the right direction? The main idea is that no one has to do this by themselves. There are people who have been doing this work for decades upon decades who are ready to equip folks with the tools to be effective to change the world.
I'm not asking for permission anymore. I'm not asking for a seat at the table. My friends, this is the first generation of us. We have a huge opportunity. We have power and influence and wealth. And we can start building the tables where we get the prime seats. Today, we want to invite you to join us as investors in venture. I know no one's asked you to do it before. It might be something that seems scary or foreign, but I promise you it's not that different than investing in a mutual fund where your retirement funds are. I want you to lean in and just learn a little bit more. How about making the commitment that in the next 12 months, you can give yourself 12 months to figure it out and to take a step. I want to invite you to be part of the new table of power and influence and wealth. You're invited. I want to sit at the table with you because we're going to make big change. We're going to make the world we've been dreaming of. So let's say my privilege includes I have a big network, right? And I could invite women together and say, hey, you guys, every come have dinner at my house, but you have to donate. And let me tell you, here are the primary challenges faced by independent clinics today. Can you give us a sense of like what solutions are you helping to support?
One of the biggest things is the cost of abortion care. So many people can't afford to pay out of pocket for their abortions. Abortion care, though the prices have been as suppressed as we can keep them, it can still be very expensive and burdensome for folks.
What is
So
it? I'm sure it depends on where you live, but if you would
it
say
depends both on where you live and where you are in pregnancy. So obviously earlier in pregnancy is more affordable than later in pregnancy. So all of those things contribute to making it difficult. But also people, because of the abortion laws, have to travel for care. So lodging, hotel, childcare, gas, food. There's a myriad of things that people are having to pay for. So in the clinic, we try to, again, subsidize the prices as much as we can. We don't actually bring in as much money as it costs us to provide that care. So we because we are a nonprofit organization, we seek individual contributions and grant support to help to make up the gap so that when we're giving discounted care or free care to patients, we don't have to sacrifice paying our staff a livable wage, making sure that our facility is clean and well equipped. So those are some of the struggles that independent providers are facing now is how do we fill in the gap to make sure that our patients can get the care they need it, when they don't have the money in their pockets, but that we also have enough resources to support the other work that we're doing. And then I think the other part of it, and we talked about before, many organizations are doing political organizing. Some states have ballot initiatives. They're doing civic engagement and get out the vote. They're doing education work around sex ed, consent, how to use a condom. All of those things also require resources to help us keep those things afloat. We never think about abortion in a vacuum. It is a part of a continuum of care. And so we want to make sure that we have the support necessary to make sure patients have exactly what they need when they need it with as few barriers as possible.
Yeah. Thank you so much for helping to zoom out a little bit from just thinking about abortion, but it's like it's the whole cycle. And there's so much that we need to do to make sure people are safe every step of the way, starting with kids. Given the capacity of women, specifically BIPOC women, affected by the Dobbs decision and other SCOTUS rulings on abortion, what would you say has been the most challenging thing for you to witness? I feel like you must have so much secondary trauma. I just want to give you a hug. But what are the things that have been the hardest for you?
Well, in Georgia, as a result of the Dobbs decision, we can't provide abortion care beyond the point at which fetal cardiac activity is detectable via ultrasound, which is a complicated way of saying around 6 weeks in pregnancy. Now, a lot of folks have talked about how this is very, very early in pregnancy. A lot of people don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So it's a very tight timeline for people to come in and get care. And so the hardest thing is turning people away from care that they want and need, and in some cases are desperate for.
Yeah.
And we know that it is not realistic or reasonable to expect that people can just get on a plane, get on a train, drive hundreds of miles in order to get an appointment for something that they should be able to get where they live.
Well, privileged, wealthy women can do all of that. How on earth is it fair that is, it literally is saying we have different classes of people with different access, and that is so brutally unacceptable.
Absolutely.
And this is an example of what you started out talking about to me from the very top of this conversation. This is the real live today example of how we are continuing to undermine the potential for people to build the lives that are healthy and safe for them and their families.
Exactly. And if we, to that beginning question, we're willing to reckon with racial discrimination, with some of the true causes of poverty, sometimes people feel like abortion is their only option because they don't have the other social supports to be able to grow their families in the way that they might. So if we really took a hard look at how we might wanted to address homelessness, housing insecurity, poverty, hunger, some people might choose to grow their families differently than they do now. If you have to make a decision between bringing in another child into a home that is unstable or unsafe and terminating a pregnancy, it's not really a fair choice.
No.
That doesn't mean that abortion will be eliminated because it will always be necessary. But I do want us to be able to think about people's whole lives and not just their reproductive organs. Pregnancy is one moment in time. We really want to be invested in how do people live out their reproductive destiny from the time their period starts to the time they go through menopause, from the times that they're thinking about their gender and how they can affirm who they are, to the times where they're thinking about growing their families and like what ways they might want to do that. We want to be able to make sure people have resources, respect, and rights to be able to live out their own self-determination.
Oh my God, that's like the mic drop moment. Thank you very much. That is so beautiful. Can we just talk a little bit about you as a leader? How would you define your leadership?
I really root my leadership in integrity. I think that fairness, equity, integrity, honesty are very core values to who I am. I try so hard to be as thoughtful, and I balance the pragmatic and the dreaminess. I try very hard to be visionary and expansive and imaginative, and sometimes to the point of radical naivete of like what is possible, but also move at the pace that works for people on my team, people in our partnerships. Relationships are a really important part of how I organize. So building like authentic relationships with people really feels like a tool to get things done. So if I trust you, if we spent time together, if we can share values and perspective, that I can build all kinds of unimaginable things with you. So those are the things I try to hold on to, like wild optimism and a little bit of pragmatism.
With integrity as the frame, like the absolute roots. And I just want to I'm so glad you said that because for me, I'm a lot older than you are. I feel like I've always had that as the center of my work and with a little bit of dose of love interspersed. And at my life stage to be able to run nonprofits for 35 years, that is the critical element for your sustainability as a leader to really know that you've done the right thing in the best way you knew how. And it just bleeds out of you this warmth. I think anyone who would work with you's got to feel so safe and so seen. And you're pragmatic and clear as a leader about what needs to be done, but it doesn't ever feel, to me, the way you come across is it doesn't ever feel jarring or like, oh, well, fine, that's for her to do. It just feels like it's so welcoming and it's like a big circle. So you talked about doing this in community, and I can imagine, and I love that I get to be a small part of your community of support. I hope everybody who's listening today, really, most of you who are listening aren't running a reproductive justice organization and maybe, have done the corporate pathway and are looking up and trying to figure out how to have an impact in the world. That being the gift of being around a leader like you after having been bruised and seeing other kinds of leadership is just so extraordinary for everybody listening today. I encourage you to think about how can you engage with a leader who defines themselves like Kwajelyn and maybe even be involved with her work, because this is you're a beautiful kind of leader. Is there an inspiration that you would say keeps you going? What gives you your juice?
Well, first, thank you so much. That was really kind of you to say. I think so. Certainly, I take a lot of inspiration from the women in my legacy. My grandmother was the high school principal of one of the largest high schools in the country at the time. And often when I'm called upon, particularly when I'm giving like public speaking, I'm on a panel or I have to give remarks, she is someone that I can like feel with me when I'm speaking from my heart. So I certainly lean on that inspiration quite a bit and think about her and the ways that she lives inside of me. I think beyond that, I really try to hold on to optimism as the fuel. I've talked to people a lot about how a lot when rage and fear, they are really good igniters. They are lighter fluid. They will get you sparked, but you can't heat your home with lighter fluid. You need something that will burn slower and that will hold and sustain and generate the kind of heat that we need, the kind of resilience and stamina that we need. So, hope and optimism, those are the real fuels. Being able to imagine against what might feel like a ridiculous notion of like what is possible, and then thinking about what can I do today that's going to bring me 1 inch closer to that radical vision. to that vision of liberation that I want to see in the world. I did an exercise in the op-ed project. I always give them credit, called telescopic visioning, where you try to imagine 100 years from now, what does it look like? What's happening? What's important? What's centered? What's valued? Is your most audacious vision. And then say, okay, in order for that 100-year vision to happen, what do I need to have happened in 50 years? And then what needs to happen in 25 years to get to the 50 years, to get to the 100 years? And then keeping that going back, zooming back in. What needs to happen in 7 years? What needs to happen in 2 years? What needs to happen this year? What needs to happen this month? What needs to happen this week? What do I need to do today? And being able to say, if I take this meeting 100 years from now, abortion will be free. And being able to map that, even if it feels silly, I find it to be incredibly useful to help to mark my path for what I can do right now that's going to be useful, that's going to contribute to what I want to see in the world.
Oh my goodness, you are magnificent. So you are a part of our How Women Lead network. What has it meant to you to be sort of part of this community of women, a lot of corporate women leaders, such a huge network of people with a lot of influence? What's possible with a network like this?
I think I would again go first to relationship building. I think being able to be connected to people who have a wide variety of experience, of knowledge, of skills, of interests. I think being able to find the places where things naturally fit together, find the places where you have commonality, where you have shared ideas, where you have similar points of view, similar personalities. I think that there's so much power and potential in building community with people, especially those who have different things than you have. So that feels like one of the real strengths of the How Women Lead network, and through those different fellowships, that people who would not necessarily otherwise cross paths have a point of connection and an opportunity to learn from one another. And so I really, in my fellowship, felt incredibly blessed to build relationships with people around the world that, again, I might not have otherwise had an opportunity to be in community with, but now can call upon, but now can share with, can celebrate with, can mourn with people who care about my future and that I have an opportunity to care about theirs.
So what you're talking about is the Women Leaders for the World Fellowship Program. And I'm an alum. I went through in 2012 when it was out of Santa Clara University, and powerful transformative experience to be with women outside the United States. There's something so magical about seeing how people approach issues, and also some of the nationalistic silliness we have. It's like, yeah, well, we do not have the corner on this market of feminism for sure. But with Women Leaders for the World, we did a reproductive justice cohort. We did two. What did that mean for you during this period of challenge with the Dobbs decision to be with other sisters?
It was a wild time because the Dobbs decision happened while we were a part of this cohort. So one, it was certainly challenging to manage all of the things that were happening and moving while also trying to make time and commit to completing the fellowship as it was designed. So that was hard, but it certainly was a space for folks to, again, learn from, connect with, commiserate with one another about an issue that we all care about. And folks from the global space being able to share what happened in their countries that is different from or similar to what's happening in the United States right now. And so I always look forward to those opportunities for us to, again, look back and look forward at what's possible. The United States is not the center of gravity. So there are many things to gain and glean and share that are happening all across the globe. And so, yeah, I'm always grateful for being in spaces with folks who can bring those perspectives.
So with the fellowship, we have two different elements I think are pretty powerful. One is we have executive coaches who volunteer their time and provide coaching support for 6 to 9 months. And then we also have a global advisor role. Did you feel like you were able to connect with these global people who are your global advisor? With any ahas or any moments of light for you?
I was able to connect with a global advisor who works in abortion care. And so that was, I think, really special. And we've continued to cross paths in many spaces since. And they were able to give me really good insight. My project was really about helping to transition some of our clinical services to help to manage the loss of some of our abortion care. And my global advisor was really able to help me refine and sharpen some of the strategies that we've been trying to employ. And we're still in the process of implementing some of those things right now.
Yeah, well, the one thing you can count on is the world will continue to change. Thank you so much. How can people get in touch with you if they want to support you?
Our website is feministcenter.org and our Instagram is Feminist Center. And we have lots of opportunities for folks to volunteer or folks to financially support if that's something that you're interested in. And also just give a tiny plug that we are working towards having a briefing to help to share with folks how we have transitioned and evolved in these last 2 years since Dobbs, but also to set a trajectory for where we're going. So folks can learn more about that at our website or on our Instagram.
Thank you so much. What a treat to spend time with you. I know everybody who listened to this learned a ton, got very practical things to do, but also got a glimpse into your powerful leadership and how you really keep that optimism front and center with your values of integrity at the cornerstone. You're an amazing leader, and I'm so honored to spend time with you today.
Thank you, Julia. It's been an honor to be on the podcast. I really appreciate it.